Hello everyone, it's Helen at Journaling Planet, and today I'm sharing a video in which I turn a brown piece of packaging into a really gorgeous Painty Masterboard. What's obvious in the video and isn't so obvious to me as I'm doing this is that there is in fact a big kind of seam in the packaging that will cause me problems later when I cut it all up. But I was too busy trying to get my glue down and my tissue paper down to even notice how flat or not the packaging was. So a little tip for you, don't be as impatient as me. When you're using a piece of packaging, just make sure that it hasn't got any major seams in it, that it's flat, that it lies flat, and you'll be able to chop it up without any issues. This piece of tissue paper that I just laid down, I just saw in a discount store, and it kind of reminded me of Kandinsky's circles, and Kandinsky is one of my favourite artists, so I decided that I would use it as a base for a Painty Masterboard. And I'm going straight in with some acrylics, and my only stipulation with myself on this masterboard was that I was only going to paint or draw in circles, and that was the only kind of boundary I gave myself. I could have used any colours, but I decided to mimic the colours of the original tissue paper. I'm still very much learning about abstract art and also mixed media in general, and I have to say that my downfall is my patience. If you look at what I'm doing right now with this orange paint, the blue paint is not dry, and consequently it's blending with the orange paint and making a kind of bit of a green mush at that point in the masterboard. But all I can tell you is, like, I couldn't wait for it to dry. I really did want to kind of get on with the next stage and not have to wait all the time for, things to dry. And I appreciate that if I'm going to be a mixed media artist, which is probably, the direction I'm kind of going in generally, I'm going to have to get used to waiting for things to dry, or at least use a drying tool. So I did give it a little bit of time to dry between the orange and the green, and decided that I would probably get around the waiting time by just going inside the circles and around the circles rather than through the orange circles that I did with the blue. So time has moved on in this point in the video. You can probably tell a change in lighting. It's later in the day. I let all that dry and decided to see how it would look when it was dry. And I don't think the lighting in this part of the video is really doing justice to how lovely it dried and how lovely it looked when it had finished. I'm going in with a pink acrylic pen again. My patience, or lack of, showing up here, as I was like, well, I could go in with more paint, but actually I don't want to have to wait for it all to dry again. I really want to get this masterboard done, and I have a kind of vision in my mind of what it wants to look like, and I kind of want to see that as soon as possible. So going in with pink, going in with kind of orangey, kind of light orange Posca pen. It's acrylic pen, so it sort of has the same texture as the acrylic paint and goes over the acrylic paint really easily, as you can see. Again, just trying to add some detail into this. I know that whatever I do, it doesn't matter too much because it's going to get chopped up into a masterboard at the end of the day. So I don't have to make the circles too perfect or the lines too perfect, because they are going to be chopped, and that is very forgiving. I then decided that I would go in with another pen and do some circles in the orange so that everything was kind of mirrored. I forgot to restart the video when I did these yellow circles, but I think it's fairly obvious what I did. I went in with some yellow paint and I put in some yellow circles, again mimicking the colours in the background tissue paper. I then added some pink circles, which you probably can't tell that they're pink. They look more orange in this view because of the lighting. That is just the way the lighting is making it look. And when we go to the next section of the video that's shot during the day again, you'll be able to see that very clearly that it is definitely pink circles and not orange. By this point in the project, it was looking a little bit kind of busy, and I did sort of perhaps worry that I'd done a bit too much, because I went in with some white Posca pens and did some more circles. You can probably see the little doodles that I've done within the bigger circles there. And it's obvious to me that, you know, this is probably about enough to put on a masterboard. And yet I still think I was determined to just go in and do one last thing. I decided it might be a nice touch to add some tissue paper with some black circles on and decoupage those onto the spread instead of going directly onto the circles with black pen. I just thought this would add a little bit of variation, as everything else was just kind of painted or drawn directly onto the masterboard. And the next step then, once I had all those in place, was simply to glue them down. I used some gel matte medium to glue them down, and then I later decided that I was going to go over that with Mod Podge because I didn't like the finish on the napkin with just the gel matte medium. So I decided ultimately that I would go over that with Mod Podge, and if I was doing it again, I would just use Mod Podge. I wouldn't use the gel matte medium for a napkin. I didn't like the finish on it. Because I wasn't particularly thrilled with how the orange circles had come out, it's like I felt they could be more vibrant, I decided to cut out some circles from some orange card and add those. I then cut around this black packaging, and this is around the time that I realised that there was in fact quite a big seam and that it wasn't really going to lay very flat in places when I trimmed it. But I did like the overall look of the masterboard, and I thought that any pieces that didn't make the cut, as in perhaps they were a bit beveled, I could just use those as art scraps for future projects. So then I went ahead and guillotined these down into smaller pieces. There were no measurements taken for this. You can if you want to. If you're wanting to do artist trading cards, then yes, of course, you're going to need to measure. If you want to make, say, tags or journaling cards or a specific amount, then yes, by all means measure. I rather feel myself that measuring takes the fun out of a lot of art stuff. So unless I have to, and sometimes there are cases where I have to measure things, unless I have to, I just eyeball it and know that whatever happens, I'll probably get something interesting out of it. And so I pay more attention to where I think the cuts will be the most interesting looking at the masterboard itself, what shapes would probably be well placed together, and where I should then place the cuts in relation to that. If you found this video helpful or entertaining, please consider hitting the like button, leaving a comment, or subscribing, or all three if you're feeling really generous. Such activity helps other people who are also looking for abstract art tutorials find what they're looking for. So that would be a big help for me. Thank you so much. I ended up getting so many pieces out of this masterboard, and I knew that I would go on to make another video where I used the pieces of masterboard to create ephemera. And so I decided to sort of quickly go through them and decide which pieces I was going to work with and which pieces would be sort of set aside for another day. So I started to look through the pieces that I had in mind that I thought I might select. And I thought, right, okay, I'll lay my final pieces down for you to see. I mean, look how gorgeous they are. So abstract, so unique. They're not the kind of thing you could just pick up in a craft store in terms of craft paper. The texture of them is just so beautiful. There are definitely moments in this project where I second guessed what I was doing, where I thought, oh, this is not going to work out how I hoped it would. And that would be a shame. But just keep adding pieces. That's my tip. And keep adding until you're happy with what you've got in front of you. So I'm going to be playing around with these finished pieces in the next video. I'm going to be making some tags, journaling cards, and other ephemera. I'm going to try and keep it very abstract. So do join me for that, to see what I do with these pieces. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.